On August 28, 2025, Curtis Windom was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison, bringing to an end a long and controversial chapter in Florida's criminal justice history. This execution marked the conclusion of a 33-year saga that began with a brutal triple murder in 1992, a crime that shocked the community and left deep scars on the families involved. Windom's execution was the 11th carried out in Florida that year, a record number, making the state the nation's leader in capital punishment for 2025 and drawing national attention to its policies. The surge in executions was largely attributed to Governor Ron DeSantis's aggressive signing of death warrants, a move that fueled this unprecedented pace and sparked heated debate across the state. Windom's death at age 59 closed a painful chapter for the victims' families, who had waited decades for justice, but it also reignited passionate arguments over the morality and effectiveness of the death penalty. The process itself was clinical and quiet, carried out behind closed doors, a stark contrast to the violence that started it all and the public outcry that followed. With another execution already scheduled in the coming weeks, Florida's momentum in carrying out capital punishment shows no sign of slowing, raising new questions about the future of the death penalty in the state. Each case forces the public to confront difficult questions about justice, retribution, and mercy, and to consider what kind of society they want to be. Windom's path to death row began on November 7, 1992, with a dispute over a $2,000 debt. It was a seemingly ordinary day that would soon spiral into a nightmare. Learning that Johnny Lee, the man who owed him, had won $114 at the racetrack, Windom snapped. The small victory for Lee was the final straw for Windom. He bought a revolver, confronted Lee, and shot him dead. The confrontation was swift and brutal, leaving no room for negotiation or mercy. The violence escalated. Windom then killed his girlfriend, Valerie Davis, in her apartment, and shot another man who survived. The scene was chaotic, with neighbors in shock and emergency services rushing to the site. As Valerie's mother, Mary Lubin, arrived at the scene, Windom killed her too. Her arrival, meant to provide comfort, only added to the tragedy. In just hours, 3 lives were lost and another nearly so, all over a debt that quickly became irrelevant. The community was left to grapple with the senselessness of the violence. Windom was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death, plus 22 years for attempted murder. The courtroom was filled with a mix of relief and sorrow as the verdict was read. The rampage left families shattered and a community reeling. The emotional scars would take years to heal, if they ever truly could. The brutality of that day would haunt everyone involved for decades. The memory of the violence lingered, a dark shadow over the community. After his 1993 conviction, Windom spent over 3 decades on death row, confined to a small cell and isolated from the outside world, his case winding through endless appeals and legal battles that seemed to have no end. His lawyers argued he'd received poor legal representation throughout the trial and that his mental health issues were never fully considered by the courts or the jury. These appeals delayed his execution for years, but ultimately failed to overturn his sentence. For victims' families, the drawn-out process was agonizing and emotionally exhausting. For Windom's, it was a sliver of hope that justice might be reconsidered. In August 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected his final appeal, ending all remaining possibilities. With no legal options left, the execution proceeded as scheduled. After 33 years, the sentence was finally carried out, closing a long and painful chapter. Windom's execution stirred deep, conflicting emotions among those left behind, leaving families and friends grappling with loss. Some, including his daughter Curtisia, born from his relationship with Valerie Davis, publicly forgave him and campaigned against his execution, believing it would only deepen their pain and suffering. They saw Windom as more than just his crimes, maintaining a relationship with him in prison despite everything. For others, like Kemeny Hunter, Valerie's sister, the execution brought long-awaited closure after decades of grief and unanswered questions. The divide within families showed how justice and healing mean different things to different people, and can even change over time. Some found peace in forgiveness, others in the finality of the law and the closure it brought. The state's decision to execute Windom ultimately reflected the latter view. The legacy of his crimes remains complex, with no single path to healing for those affected. Windom's execution is part of Florida's record-setting spree, intensifying the debate over capital punishment. In recent years, Florida has carried out more executions than almost any other state, drawing national attention and sparking heated discussions about the future of the death penalty. Supporters argue it delivers justice and closure for victims' families, believing that the ultimate punishment is necessary for the most heinous crimes. They say it sends a strong message that society will not tolerate such acts. Meanwhile, opponents cite moral, financial, and racial concerns, pointing to the risk of executing innocent people and the disproportionate impact on marginalized communities. Critics say Governor DeSantis's actions are politically motivated, prioritizing image over nuanced justice. They argue that ramping up executions is a way to appeal to certain voters, rather than addressing deeper issues within the criminal justice system. The governor's office insists he's simply enforcing the law, maintaining that the state has a duty to carry out sentences handed down by the courts, regardless of political pressure or public opinion. Windom's case encapsulates the horror of violent crime, the slow grind of the legal system, and the human struggle for forgiveness and closure. For many, it's a painful reminder of the trauma that lingers long after the crime itself. It forces us to ask, what is justice? Can execution bring healing, or does it simply perpetuate a cycle of pain and loss? These are questions with no easy answers. As long as the death penalty exists, these questions will divide families and communities, fueling passionate arguments on both sides, and shaping the way we view crime and punishment in America. The story of Curtis Windom is a stark reminder of the complexities at the heart of America's death penalty debate, and the difficult choices our society continues to face.